It's time for the Splash Live from Civic Center TV, featuring stories from and about people like you in the Greater West Bloomfield area. Simulcast on cable, 89.3 Lakes FM, social media, and the web. Now live from Green Media Center on Walnut Lake Road, it's the Splash Live.
Live, local, social, it's the Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tyler Keefe, and of course encourage you to always stay with us across our social media and find us on civiccentertv.com. Our top story today is continued success on the basketball court for the West Bloomfield Lakers. The girls varsity basketball team competed in the MHSAA Division I state quarterfinals on Tuesday evening at Callahan Hall in Detroit. Our Civic Center TV reporter Kevin McIntosh has the story.
Here at Callahan Hall, where the West Bloomfield Lakers take on the Utica Ford Falcons for a spot in the MHSAA state semifinals. This marks the Lakers' fourth straight quarterfinals appearance, and they're looking to extend their streak of Final Four appearances to 4 as well.
There's a lot of pride associated with the return, of course, but not surprised. These girls have been preparing for this moment for my daughter, at least in that group, the last 3 years. So I've been following the team and just their drive and dedication, the hard work that the coaches put in. It's time. So it wasn't one of those things where it was like, oh, we made it. No, it's like we're here. What next?
The Lakers got things kicked off early with the first couple buckets scored by Brianna and Breasia Gamble-Jones, respectively. Utica Ford eventually put numbers on the scoreboard from the foul line. From that point on, it was pretty much the Lake Show, with West Bloomfield ending the first quarter with a 3-point lead, 8-5. The Lakers guard, Sheridan Beal, started the second quarter with a fast break layup, but it was answered by the Falcons with a 3-pointer. Free throws from both West Bloomfield and Utica Ford added to the scoreboard, but it was the Lakers who picked it up with physical points in the paint to further their lead in the first half. More action started to happen as each squad traded shots in the second quarter. The more dominant team took over and ended the half with a 7-point lead. West Bloomfield 23, Utica Ford 16. Coming back from the break, both teams discussed their game plan, then it was game time. West Bloomfield got back to business with big-time buckets, but Utica Ford's defense showed up to the meeting as well. The Lakers' response to the Falcons' defense resulted in fouls and more free throws from each team. The game got interesting to start the second half, featuring key plays on opposite ends of the court. But once again, it was West Bloomfield who finished the third quarter on top, 40-25. In the fourth, it was the same story, different quarter. Dominance from the Lakers, more physical play on the floor, and more bang for your buckets from each squad. By the end, West Bloomfield had the questions and Utica Ford had almost no answers as the Lakers took the Falcons to school in this test for the best, 57-35. After the game, we got reactions from senior forward Brianna Gamble-Jones and assistant coach Glenn's for their reactions to the game and going back to the state semifinals for a 4th straight year.
It's very exciting. I'm happy that we're going back to the Breast for the 4th time. Now it's time to win it all.
Excited for the girls, great effort. We started the year 1-4. A lot of people counted us out, didn't think we had a chance. I think at that point, we didn't even believe in ourselves at that point, and we kind of had to go back to the drawing board. We kind of took some plays and put them to the side and focused on a couple things to get going, and then we just started adding things as the season went along. So super proud for the girls. They worked very hard all year long, and super proud for West Bloomfield.
The West Bloomfield Lakers are headed back to the Breslin Center. With a hard-fought win over Utica Ford, the Lakers have now secured their 4th straight trip to the state semifinals. From Callahan Hall, I'm Kevin McIntosh, Civic Center TV.
Thanks for the report, Kevin, and great work from the West Bloomfield Lakers to make it back to the Breslin for the 4th consecutive year. 4 straight appearances now, and those last 3 have all resulted in the Lakers either winning the state title or being the state runner-up. Can they do that again for the 4th consecutive year? We will find out on Friday afternoon at 12 o'clock tip-off against the Belleville Tigers. And it sets up a weekend that is chock full of interesting storylines following the Lakers over the years, both in basketball and across their athletics department. Think about the last 4 years where West Bloomfield has made it to both the semifinals, the last 3 years where they made it to the semifinals and the finals. In each of those 3 seasons, they've met up with another team, the Rockford Rams, who have also now made it to 4 consecutive trips to the Breslin with their win last night against the Grand Haven Buccaneers. They have Miss Basketball for Michigan and Anna Wypich, whereas Orchard Lake St. Mary's, nearby us here in Greater West Bloomfield, had Trey McKinney be Mr. Basketball for the state of Michigan in 2025. But before West Bloomfield can have maybe perhaps another rematch with Rockford, which would only happen in the 4th consecutive championship game appearance, should they make it that far, they got to get through the Belleville Tigers, a team that's a lot easier to beat in theory than it is in practice. 1 loss on the season for the number 3 ranked team in girls Division I basketball in the state of Michigan, and they're led by someone with a familiar name, Sydney Savory. A sophomore is their star, the Gatorade Player of the Year in 2025. You'll see some footage from state champs and from Brian Calloway from the recent games, where the sophomore in the number 31 for Belleville has some close connections to our community as well. Her brother, Jaden Savory, has been a star for the Orchard Lake St. Mary's Eaglets, both on the basketball court, where he was a state champion, and on the football field, where he's also a state champion from this past football season in Division I. So there's even more local connections within all of that. West Bloomfield having the most recent Miss Basketballs and Gatorade Players of the Year in the Davis twins, and then Sydney Savory from Belleville, now a Miss Basketball in the state of Michigan. 26-1 team. They've played the Lakers already this season in just their 2nd game in the KLAA OAA Challenge, where they defeated the Lakers big, 84-49. But we've seen this Lakers team come back and learn a lot over the course of the season, grow a lot over the course of the season. They purposely made their schedule, as Coach Darren McAllister called it, brutal because of preparing for the month of March. So this will be a very interesting matchup on Friday, 12 noon, tip-off at the Breslin Center. The girls' Division I semifinal. We'll have our coverage here on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM on the Splash Live before the game, and of course on our social media. If you go to civiccentertv.com, right at the top of the page, we'll have a link that'll go to civiccentertv.com/Lakers25, following along with the West Bloomfield girls basketball team all throughout their historic 4th consecutive trip to the Breslin Center for state finals weekend. We know the whole community cheering on their Lakers. West Bloomfield will also be the center of attention for local government tonight. The State of the County for 2025 being delivered at the iconic Berman Center for the Performing Arts right here in West Bloomfield Township. It is an invite-only event in person for Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter, as he'll go through the developments in Oakland County over the past 365 days since his previous address last year at the Hawk in Farmington Hills, and talk about where the county is looking to go throughout the rest of 2025 and in the years ahead. It'll be live streamed from Oakland County on their YouTube page. We'll also pick it up ourselves and bring it to you live right here on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, stay tuned. Later on this week, we'll have extended coverage of the state of the county right here on the Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Another good reason to follow along with us on our Facebook at Civic Center TV 15, as well as on X, Instagram, and on YouTube at Civic Center TV. As the sun starts to shine outdoors across Greater West Bloomfield, it feels like spring. We're getting out and about and joining together with our friends, going out to restaurants, to events, and even enjoying some nice coffee outdoors. Now, you can do all of that at a local eatery right here in Greater West Bloomfield. That's also helping people learn to develop job skills in some of our most important communities across our local area. Reporter Jake Schaff has the story.
For the last 8 years, this restaurant has been treating customers to great food and a warm, cozy environment to relax. But it's the work they do for their employees that is most worth talking about today. Soul Cafe in West Bloomfield has been well known for their employment of people with special needs, providing them with fun work experience and giving them the tools they need to succeed. It's also provided them with a close community of people they can rely on. So close that some might even call it a family.
We are a restaurant that's part of the Friendship Circle trainee program. What we really work to do every day here is to make a comfortable, safe place for individuals with special needs to come and learn, train, work in a work environment, which is all part of what the Friendship Circle is about. How this developed really was that a lot of the kids that they took such great care of became older, and the parents were looking for something for them to be able to go to and give back and do good for our community. We based our trainee program about the needs of what the restaurant is, and not only our restaurant, but the goal is to find employment elsewhere at different restaurants so that we can continue to grow the program and to continue to train and employ individuals with special needs.
It is a great program. I think that, multiple people with special needs, need a program like this because it helps them and to grow, especially when people are helping them to work and train throughout the whole program. So it helps out, and I truly love it myself. So I think it's a great program. A lot of people don't, have the ability to do something like this, especially when they're special needs, because they need a place to be, to be trained, to work, to socialize. So that's what we're here for. That's our actual part of being part of the Soul Cafe, is to socialize, to work, to help train, and to work together as a big family. So that's my personal feeling about this place.
If you could describe Soul Cafe in one word, what would it be?
We're all about our soul. Really, it's understanding and seeing the beauty of every soul, of every individual, regardless of where they are or who they are. Sometimes that's forgotten. We look at what their outside is or what the outside looks. But over here, we're all about inclusivity and everyone has a shining soul, and we want to bring that soul out.
It's the kind of place where you can't help but smile every time you walk in the door, as Soul Cafe continues to do great work for the community, and more importantly, continues to change lives as well. For Civic Center TV, I'm Jake Schaff.
Appreciate the report, Jake. I'm a coffee snob myself, so I've been over to the Soul Cafe. They have a great cup of joe over there, some great treats, and some really good company as well. So they're open Sunday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. according to their listings. You can find them on Drake Road, just off of Maple Road in West Bloomfield Township each and every day. Go over there, support their people, and enjoy some friendly company as well at the Farber Soul Center. Across the nation, measles becoming a rising concern for communities, and that's now the case here in Oakland County, where the first case of measles in the state of Michigan was recently confirmed, both by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Oakland County Health Division, with the cases being confirmed in the Rochester area in the last week or so. Christy Clement Halliday is the chief of the Oakland County Communicable Disease Unit with the Oakland County Health Division, and joins us for more information now on the Splash Live. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you on to talk about this, because it's something that we're hearing in the national news. We're hearing a lot about the measles. It hasn't quite hit our community until recently, where we had that first confirmed case in the state of Michigan in our local area. So when it comes to the measles, what are the primary concerns from our local health apparatus?
Our primary concerns are that we really want the community to check their vaccination status, for one. Basically, anyone, if you were born before 1957, are considered to be immune because measles was so common back then that everyone was pretty much infected or at least exposed. If you were born after 1957, we really recommend you check your immunization status. If you have 2 documented doses of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, then you're fine. If you don't have 2 documented doses, our recommendation is to go ahead and get vaccinated through your own healthcare provider, or we do offer the vaccine here at the Oakland County Health Division at both our Pontiac and Southfield locations.
And we know that the confirmed case in our local area happened just recently, just in the past several days, and it was in northern Oakland County. And so for those that may have been in that general area, first of all, tell us where that area is and what people really should be on the lookout for symptom-wise in themselves and others if they may have been around that exposure site.
Yes, absolutely. So through case investigation, we determined that the person with measles, while they were contagious, had dinner at Cruz and Muir on the main street in downtown Rochester, and that was on March 3rd. And then also made 2 trips to the emergency department at the Henry Ford Emergency Department in Rochester, also known as Crittenton. So if anybody was at those locations on those days, they should, first of all, check your vaccination status, make sure you're up to date. And secondly, just keep an eye on your symptoms. Measles has an incubation period of anywhere from a week to 3 weeks, 7 to 21 days. And look out for symptoms. The hallmark symptoms that we're looking for are kind of like cold-like symptoms: runny nose, cough, red, runny eyes, followed by a high fever and a rash. Generally, the rash starts on the head and works its way down the body. And that will happen after the cold-like symptoms. So keep an eye out for those. If you do experience any symptoms you're concerned about, call your healthcare provider before going in so that you can alert them that you're concerned you may have been exposed to measles and you may have some symptoms that are consistent with measles. Always call ahead.
The recent exposure to the first case of measles confirmed in Oakland County since July, and in the state of Michigan since July of 2024. So just a little bit over, just a little under a year later, we have this case confirmed here in the state of Michigan, the first and the most recent, for lack of better terms off the top of my head, outbreak across the United States. But it's also not quite at the point where there's a cause for panic in the health community. And so where does the health community stand at this point, both in our local area, but even beyond that at the state and the national level when it comes to these most recent cases we've been hearing about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no cause for panic. We don't want people to panic. We want them to be aware. Certainly, we're concerned. Anytime there's a resurgence of a vaccine preventable disease, it's cause for concern. But it is a vaccine preventable disease. It's highly preventable. So we want people to be aware, check their vaccine status, and make sure they're up to date and their children are up to date in vaccine. Because we can definitely prevent an outbreak in our area. We just need to be aware and take precautions.
oakgov.com/health is the website for the Oakland County Health Division. Christy Clement Halliday joins us today on the Splash Live. She is the chief of their communicable disease unit. As we talk about the measles cases that have been noticed of late across the nation, the first confirmed case in the state of Michigan, right here in Oakland County at the beginning of March in the city of Rochester. Getting the information out there, what you need to know about measles as it affects Oakland County and our local area here in Greater West Bloomfield at this time. And Christy, it's not lost on me, and I'm sure it's not lost on many people, that this is coming out on the 5-year anniversary of really when we got to the beginning of the pandemic stage of the COVID-19 saga. And so now that we've got that information behind us, we've gone through that experience, our health community has gone through that experience, how have those lessons informed the way that Oakland County and our local health systems are approaching things like the measles, that is, as you said, a disease that does have a vaccine cure to it?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. We want the community to know that we are their partners here at the health department. We want to be completely transparent as much as we can be. We want to build trust. We want you to know that we're here for the health of the community. What's different about a measles outbreak and early COVID days is that we know measles really well, right? We know what to do. We know what interventions to put in place to halt spread of disease. And we're confident in that. And so we really hope that the community reaches out to us with questions, concerns, and has trust in us. And we can do everything we can, it's feasible to prevent the spread of measles in our state if we take that action.
And it's inevitable that there are going to be some people that are averse to getting updates to their vaccinations. They want to take other methods to keep themselves healthy and safe. And especially now as the weather is starting to warm, people are starting to emerge from their homes. How much more important does it then become to take those additional basic steps that we did learn during the pandemic that may not involve necessarily vaccines to also help prevent the spread of measles potentially in Oakland County?
Yeah, absolutely. It is always important to keep a healthy diet, get adequate sleep, exercise, reduce stress as much as possible. That helps us overall in our health maintenance for all kinds of illnesses, whether they're chronic illnesses or contagious diseases, helps improves outcomes. So we definitely want to make sure that people are aware of just their health status and health practices as much as they can be. And just be aware of symptoms to look out for. Again, even if someone's not vaccinated and they are having symptoms they think are consistent with a communicable disease such as measles, reach out to the healthcare provider. You can even call us at the health department and we'll provide resources and talk you through that. But certainly now that the weather's getting nicer, we're a little bit more cheerful and able to get out there. So get some exercise in, walk around, eat some healthy, fresh foods, and get good rest.
More information and contact info for the Oakland County Health Division if you have additional questions can be found on oakgov.com/health. Christy Clement Halliday is with us on the Splash Live today as we talk about the most recent exposure of measles in Oakland County and Rochester in early March. Now, the concern date is in early March. Those on or after March 10th that may have been exposed to measles in our community. And really the symptoms start to appear for about 3 weeks after that first exposure. And there is a certain amount of time where the most effective treatment for high-risk individuals may be in play. So if people are watching out for these symptoms, they may have been in that general area in Rochester during the time of exposure. How long should they be watching out for those symptoms, and how important is it to get help early on if they do experience them?
Yeah, it's always important to get medical care early on. So measles has an incubation period, meaning the time from when one is infected to when they experience symptoms of around 7 to 14 days, but at the long end, it can be up to 3 weeks or 21 days. So we just really encourage anyone who is experiencing any symptoms that they think might be consistent with measles. So like I said, it starts out with a runny nose, cough, and a lot of times red runny eyes, like a pink eye type of situation. Followed by a fever and then a rash that starts on the head and works its way down. Call your healthcare provider right away. Anytime there's an infection or a healthcare problem, the earlier that you get medical intervention, the better. Now, there's no specific treatment for measles. It's generally just supportive care in terms of symptoms and complications that can show up. So we definitely want to make sure a healthcare provider is involved because measles can cause pneumonia, ear infections, rarely brain swelling, and several other serious complications.
And lastly, Christy, just briefly, we've got about 30 seconds. I know that
Sure.
in some cases with these communicable diseases, it's better to go call an emergency department at a local hospital as opposed to going into your doctor's office. Is that the case with this, or can we go to our primary care provider?
You can absolutely go to your primary provider as long as you're not feeling like it's a life-threatening situation. Okay. And we encourage the healthcare providers in the community to reach out to us. So if a patient calls with concerns about measles, we can provide direction on how to safely obtain lab tests to determine if the person has measles or not without putting the medical care staff or other patients at risk.
All right, well, we appreciate your time and appreciate your insight on this. Again, just one case so far that's been determined in Oakland County, but any case of measles is something that we have as a vaccine-preventable disease that's reemerging, as you have said, something to at least keep your eye out for those symptoms. And if you're feeling unwell, to go get checked out. Christy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
oakgov.com/health is their website for even more information and updates on measles or other diseases that may be affecting Oakland County at this time and going forward. We'll take a break on the Splash Live. Plenty more to get to on the other side, so stick with us and follow us, of course, across our social media. Live, local, social, it's the Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
We'll be right back with the Splash Live. bringing you stories and memories from Kego Harbor. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
Hi, I'm Chris Fry, Park Superintendent, West Bloomfield Parks. Congratulations, Civic Center TV, on 1 million views on YouTube. Thank you for all you do in the community, and thank you for having me on The Splash throughout the season to talk about activities out in the parks. Chris Fry, proud to be 1 in a million.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Two milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too
Sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And now, back to The Splash, live.
Live, local, social, it's The Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Thank you for joining me. I'm Tyler Kieft, and of course I encourage you to follow us for even more information and updates all throughout the week on civiccentertv.com and across our social media with links, of course, on our website. Here in Greater West Bloomfield, we really appreciate our wetlands and our woodlands and all that green space we have in West Bloomfield, Kego Harbor, Orchard Lake Village, and of course, Sylvan Lake. But a caveat of all that green space means a little bit more wildlife also being present in our community, including population of deer, with about 1/3 of our land suitable here in our community as a deer habitat. So how do we counteract that? How do we help both the deer and our local property owners as well? That's all being managed through the Michigan Department of Natural Resources with their wildlife biologist, Chad Fedewa, joining us now for more on The Splash Live. Chad, thank you so much for being with us.
Sure, happy to be here.
Happy to have you on to talk about this because it's something that maybe we're not necessarily seeing being a big problem right now in Greater West Bloomfield with higher populations of deer all throughout our community. But as the weather warms and they start to roam and get out and about more often, we're going to see a lot more of them in our community. So what sets up Greater West Bloomfield for being sort of a hotbed in Oakland County for large populations of deer roaming around?
As you mentioned, there's a lot of good habitat and green space for them. And no surprise, in this area, urbanization, expansion, has happened a lot since the 1960s. Back then, there weren't a lot of deer in the southern lower peninsula, but over time we have seen deer numbers increase, and particularly in urban and suburban areas, mainly the last 10 to 15 years, where we're starting to see some negative impacts due to overabundance in some areas. So deer have adapted and adjusted to living around people. Like we mentioned, there's plenty of food sources, sometimes human-assisted. We have people feeding deer intentionally. But in these areas, there's often very low mortality rates. We have very few predators and, of course, some mild winters, so we don't have a lot of natural mortality for deer. So they've become very comfortable around people, particularly when we're not seen as a predator, and we're often seen more as a potential food source.
And so as that happens and these deer find local areas to be viable places to habitat and also to find and graze for that food, what sort of challenges does that bring up for our local communities, and not just managing this wildlife from a safety standpoint, but the ways that it impacts that wildlife, the additional wildlife in our local area?
Sure. So you have to remember that we do have, our deer they have evolved as a prey species. So, they're programmed to reproduce a lot of offspring, and, with most predators eliminated from the landscape, legal regulated hunting has been the tool for helping manage deer populations in the state in the last 75 to 100 years. So, in general, that's worked pretty well in rural areas to kind of maintain the population to a more suitable status based on the habitat that's available to support them. But it's become a challenge in urban areas due to safety concerns around hunting. So a lot of communities have historic ordinances that prevent hunting or the use of firearms and archery equipment. So as deer abundance in these areas continue to grow and impact the landscape around them, communities have been looking for options and potentially removing some of those restrictions and opening up areas to legal regulated hunting, as that's still the tool of choice for managing deer populations. And urban archery hunting can be done safely, and we do have examples of that across the state.
And Chad, we know that in Greater West Bloomfield, we value the wildlife, West Bloomfield Township and the Tri-Cities equally, and the population of our community, our residents, also love to look out their window and see the deer. But as they're seeing these increased populations, and you mentioned it, hunting in a residential area on public or private land is not permitted in West Bloomfield or in our Tri-Cities in the Greater West Bloomfield community. So what are some other ways that landowners in our community can help to manage the deer population outside of, as you mentioned, hunting, which is a highly effective tool used in other places?
And so for starters, having people not intentionally feeding deer, we like to watch them, we like to see them in our backyards, but intentionally feeding deer can artificially congregate deer. That can cause some health issues for deer if there's any diseases present in that herd. But it also creates a nuisance in some cases, and then deer transition to eating, other things, landscaping and other shrubs and things in people's, around people's houses. So, trying to eliminate deer even from eating on bird feeders if you can protect, deer from getting into those bird feeders and eating the seed off the ground. That kind of helps them, not congregating in these areas. There are some more, and there's nothing that's truly deer resistant as far as landscaping, but there are certain species of plants and shrubs that are less tolerant for deer, so they may not be as likely to browse on those. So there are a list of those things you can find online as well. It is important to develop some level of tolerance to these deer. I mean, they're not going away. We've created a perfect environment for them. Got a good, safe habitat for them, available food. It's really created a good situation for them in a lot of places.
Chad Fiedel was with us from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, or the DNR, on today's edition of the Splash Live as we address the increased population of deer we're seeing in residential communities in Oakland County, and in particular in Greater West Bloomfield, where again 2/3 of our community's land is viable space for habitat for these deer. So Chad, I'd imagine too, especially in highly populated residential areas like Greater West Bloomfield and Oakland County here in Southeast Michigan, another big concern with the rising deer population has to be traffic safety hazards, because they are roaming across our roads. I drive home at night from our studio here on Walnut Lake Road, and often as I'm going up toward Drake Road, there are deer crossing the street, and sometimes it's a big surprise, and you got to really be prepared to make a sudden stop. So how do you manage that from the DNR's perspective with local road commissions, with local communities, to try to, maybe if you're not able to counteract the hazards that come from deer, help to increase the awareness of that, or maybe even prevent some of these accidents in partnership with our road authorities?
Yeah, so obviously, we do have some road commissions will put up signage in areas where they have, high car deer vehicle collisions. But yeah, in absence of, some tool or regulated hunting to try to minimize those deer on the landscape, it is quite a challenge. We do have, some road commissions, some local units of government do try to, make people more aware of those areas that are that tend to do have more of those collisions, and it is a challenge. There's not a really great solution to it.
And so lastly, Chad, what is your message for residents in our community in terms of their ability to stay informed on ways that they can help manage the deer population in our community, along with our partners from West Bloomfield Parks, from the Michigan DNR, and other organizations?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, kind of developing a certain level of tolerance for deer in an area. Like we've created the perfect environment for them in a lot of cases, and as they get more comfortable living in and around people, we're starting to see that happen more often. So, if there is an option for some legal regulated hunting to happen in the community or some surrounding communities, that's certainly going to be a long-term solution to help regulate some of those numbers when they become too abundant for the habitat to support. So overabundance does lead to a lot of negative impacts, and certainly on those ecological landscapes and our forests, and even health issues for deer. And no one really wants to see deer suffering because there's too many for the habitat to support.
Care about our wildlife here in the Greater West Bloomfield area, and here's some great advice on how you can continue that care from one of our experts himself. Chad Fedewa with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem.
More information and helpful guidance on michigan.gov/DNR. And in addition, we have great resources right here close to home, next door to us, West Bloomfield Parks. Their naturalist team led by Lauren Azuri, always willing to answer your questions about ways that you can help our local wildlife. Keep seeing them in your backyard and enjoying them across our natural green spaces without having a negative impact on them or encouraging those wildlife to have a negative impact potentially on you, yours, and your neighbors here in the Greater West Bloomfield area. We're facing a lot of complicated issues across the globe nowadays in 2025, and while our world leaders tackle those issues through diplomacy, through negotiation, or unfortunately through some other more aggressive means, our students here in Oakland County and Greater West Bloomfield and across the state of Michigan are trying to tackle those issues themselves, and doing so through organizations like Model UN. And some of our local students, in fact, doing that very well, winning big awards at Model UN's recent meeting last weekend at Michigan State University. One of them is West Bloomfield High School student Harshitha Sankaranarayanan, who joins us now on the Splash Live. Harshitha, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, happy to have you on to talk about this journey, because I remember you mentioning it at the school board meeting recently as you talked to the board about Model UN. This was a long night for you to participate in Model UN and ultimately come out with the award as best delegate. So first off, just take us through that experience of being part of what was called a midnight crisis simulation.
Sure. So a lot of the big college conferences like MSU, they start doing these things called midnight crises. So I was able to participate in that. They had, I think, one person max from every school participating, and it was from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning. So obviously a pretty weird time, and it was directly following another committee session we had during the actual day. So we didn't get the topic revealed to us until we showed up. It was a lot of fun. The topic was about a global monster summit. So it was supposed to be a little bit fun, a little quirky, and just entertaining. And we were all able to practice our speaking skills and communicating, which of course gets harder when you're a little sleep deprived and it's like getting closer to midnight. But we had a lot of fun engaging with other people.
And so how does that teach you sort of the ways that global government can work? It's one thing to learn about it in the classroom, to hear about it in the news, to sort of analyze it from what you read and what you listen to and what you watch. But it's, I'd imagine, very different when you're participating in it yourselves with your peers.
Yeah, of course. And I think the great thing about Model UN is that oftentimes you don't get a lot of choice in what country you're representing. You get assigned one. And it's interesting to get to take that persona of that character or that country, even if you don't necessarily agree with all those things yourself, and getting to embody that gets you to kind of see the world from new perspectives and understand maybe a perspective that I might not resonate with on a daily basis. And getting to play that role makes it a lot easier to understand kind of how that plays a part in our global politics and how we can come to compromise in real life.
And so as you analyze that and you experience that, how does that change maybe your perspective on the role that our world leaders have, both at our federal level here in Washington, D.C., but others from our allies in places across the world, and even some of our adversaries in common places like Moscow and Tehran and others, as they're also tackling these issues that impact their nations?
Yeah, of course. I think it makes me realize how difficult it truly is on a global stance to come together, especially on such controversial issues sometimes, and that every single country's got their own domestic concerns, and that coupled with trying to make some global order and peace occur can be difficult. So it really puts that into perspective and has me having a lot more respect for those leaders, but also puts a lot more responsibility on those people and a lot of hope that they can do good things for the future.
Michigan's best delegate for Model UN is with us on the Splash Live. She is a student at West Bloomfield High School. Harshitha Sankaranarayanan is joining us on the Splash today, talking about the most recent Model UN state competition where she won awards for her performance in their midnight crisis simulation. And Harshitha, for those that are maybe considering different ways to participate at West Bloomfield High School, what makes Model UN special for you and or may make it a special experience for someone that's looking to get involved at WB?
Absolutely. I think Model UN is a really amazing opportunity for people who maybe aren't so familiar with talking publicly, might have some trouble with that, or are interested in getting involved. It's a way that you can engage with current events and maybe even historical events, get involved with global politics, also have an opportunity to communicate with peers across the entire state and maybe even across the nation if you're able to go to some of the bigger conferences. And it really helps you see a lot of new perspectives, get your voice out there, and really learn a lot. Over my 4 years in high school, I've learned a lot through Model UN, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone else.
And I would think, too, it's a big lesson in diplomacy. That can come in handy when you're a high school student. A lot of drama sometimes can happen in those hallways. How has that maybe helped you in your day-to-day life as a high school student, managing all these different relationships? You're also our student liaison for the school board for West Bloomfield High School. So how has this experience helped you in other leadership capacities?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think in contrast to, I also participate in the debate team. Model UN is something that's really focused on compromise and coming together for a solution. It's not about who can make the biggest war or who can make the biggest personal goals happen, even though sometimes that does come into play. It's about making sure that everyone can come to a global consensus that helps the most amount of people. And that ideology really helps to guide me in my daily life. With being the student liaison, it helps me to communicate with my other peers through other clubs and share out that information, represent all the clubs and things that are happening at the West Bloomfield High School. And it also helps in my day-to-day life with trying to see the other side of arguments and trying to be more on the same page with my friends and my peers rather than always wanting to win an argument.
Harshitha Sankaranarayanan is with us on the Splash Live. Perhaps West Bloomfield High School's best diplomat, certainly the best delegate for Model UN across the state of Michigan, according to the most recent state competition. Harshitha, before we let you go, any lasting messages about your Model UN experience that you'd like to tell us about or provide to your community?
Just overall, I would really recommend it to anyone. When I first came to high school, I did not know what Model UN was, and I really recommend that if you haven't heard about it before or just like barely are familiar with it, that you check it out, get an idea, go to a meeting, and just see if maybe it's something that could be for you, because it's a lot of fun. Even if it seems boring at first, genuinely, it's been one of the best opportunities in my high school career, and I'm so grateful to have it.
Great excuse to stay up past your bedtime. Harshitha, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Harshitha Sankaranarayanan, student liaison at West Bloomfield High School and the best delegate at the most recent state competition for Model UN. Congratulations to her and the entire Model UN program at West Bloomfield High School. You want to keep up to date with them, find more ways to get involved. You can do that on WBSD.org and also recap some of their experiences in East Lansing on Facebook at West Bloomfield Schools. We'll take a break on the Splash Live. On the other side, we'll get into our local author population. We're celebrating them as we celebrate March being Reading Month. There's going to be a local author fair coming up, and we'll speak to one of those creatives after the break. Live, local, social. It's the Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.
We'll be right back with the Splash Live. Bringing you stories and memories from Sylvan Lake. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cooked my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Hi, I'm Lauren Azuri, the Park Naturalist Supervisor for West Bloomfield Parks. Congratulations to you, Civic Center TV, for hitting 1 million views on YouTube. We really appreciate your partnership in spreading nature education in a creative way in our community. I'm Lauren Azuri, proud to be 1 in a million.
And now, back to The Splash, live.
Live, local, social, it's The Splash live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can follow along with us even after our show concludes each and every day by following us across social media, Facebook at Civic Center TV 15. You can also find us on X, on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free at Civic Center TV as well. Of course, you can find all of our programs on demand. Once again, civiccentertv.com. Here in Greater West Bloomfield, our celebration of Reading Month extends not just to our readers and our favorite books, but local authors who are making a splash themselves in our local reading community. Joining us now on the program is an author with experience in sci-fi and fantasy and a little bit of historical fiction himself, Donovan Neal, who will be one of the authors featured at the 2025 Author Fair at the library. Thank you so much for being with us, Donovan.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on as we preview your appearance at our Author Fair that is coming up. Tell us a little bit about your style of storytelling and how you do kind of mix different elements and different genres into your stories.
Basically, my specialty or niche is Christian speculative fiction. I've written a 4-book series about the fall of Lucifer. And what I try to do is take the things that we do and don't know, do know about the Bible in that particular story, and mix that in a narrative type of way. And in the same way, if you're familiar with The Chosen, I know that's a really fantastic television show that's out right now. And so using elements similar to that type of storytelling where you are looking at actual historical events and speculating to some degree about the things that we don't know and creating a very interesting tale that people can enjoy.
And it's a unique blend of these genres, as I mentioned before that first question, because you're not only bringing into this sort of theological themes and stories, and as you mentioned, different moments in history where you are forced through your storytelling to analyze them through a different lens. You're also blending in some fun with fantasy and with science fiction as well. What about that makes, in your opinion, for a more interesting telling of these stories from Christian texts and also from our history?
Well, I think as far as the story itself, one of the most fascinating things to me is about is the fact that Lucifer, Satan, the devil, call him what you will, he's already in the garden. And so I call my story the prequel to the Bible, not to be sacrilegious, but to emphasize the fact that the fall of Lucifer is the mitigating event that launches virtually everything that we see about in the Bible. And in terms of fantasy, I love Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, all of that, and what you can bring by bringing to life different elements that are obviously different from our real world setting and mixing that together with what we do know from history and creating, again, a dynamic tale. So.
The West Bloomfield Local Author Fair is happening Sunday, March 23rd from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. More information can be found on the Author Fair, including some of our local authors like Donovan Neal, who will be joining us at the event on WBLIB.org. Donovan, you have such an interesting background in working with nonprofits and working in ministry as well. And so how did you get into storytelling and becoming an author?
By accident on some level. I would say that my old creative, I went to Churchill High School in Livonia. I had a creative writing final exam, wrote a 100-page novel that was a mix of science fiction. And I didn't write again probably for about 20 years between that time frame. So there was just simply a story that I wanted to see told. And I had not seen that story told in any type of way that really satisfied me. And so in my audacity and I would even say naivety, I decided that I was going to write this story, at least for myself. And as would have it, as I published this, after I published the story, people resonated with it. They enjoyed it. And I remember one particular person who read it before it came public. Man, you've got to publish this story. So I did, and kind of the rest is history.
Donovan Neal is with us on The Splash Live, a local author from right here in the Greater West Bloomfield area that will be joining the Greater West Bloomfield community at the local author fair on Sunday, March 23rd, as we continue our local celebration of March being Reading Month. And so as you get that opportunity that you're going to have this weekend to talk to book lovers and other authors across the community, what do you pick up as a creative from being able to have that dialogue, both with people that are reading your books, but also others that are going through the same sort of experiences through that creative process themselves?
Well, when you're an author and you have an event like this, and again, shout out, kudos to the West Bloomfield local library for doing this. When you're there as an author, you have the opportunity to not just network or interface, connect with local authors. And there's various things that you can learn and pick up from them in terms of various shows, writing styles, just tips of the trade, as it were. And then there's just the overall satisfaction of being able to meet your fans and those individuals who will become fans. And so it's always a wonderful thing when you meet someone who's actually read your materials and they come and realize, hey, you're going to be in the area and I want to meet you. I want you to sign my book. I can't tell you the number of occasions where I've had instances like that, but it's always wonderful to talk with people just about storytelling, what they find, what they enjoy. And even if they don't enjoy the specific genre that I write in, usually in an event like this, you can direct them to another author that will meet the needs of what they're looking for as far as their entertainment dollars are concerned.
His book, The Third Heaven, will be on display as part of the local author fair at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. Again, that is happening Sunday, March 23rd, 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. at the main library here in West Bloomfield. And so, Donovan, as you went through the process of writing The Third Heaven, what was, in your opinion, the most challenging aspect of it, and what was the most rewarding aspect that you got out of putting that story out there?
The most challenging aspect of writing a story like this is the reality is there's just simply things that we do not know. There's simply things that the Bible are sacred texts for both Christians and those of Jewish and even Islamic persuasions. There's simply things we do not know. And so trying to satisfy, in particular, again, I write to a Christian audience primarily, trying to satisfy all of Christendom is impossible. And so there's no way that anything that I write can be looked at as in a prescribed doctrinal way. It has to be looked at from a speculative standpoint. So that was the most challenging thing, really being able to try to take a story and do justice and reverence to what for majority of the world's populations is a sacred text. And so that's the most challenging thing. The most rewarding thing was basically getting the book done, getting it finished, and taking a step back and looking at it and said, wow, we did it. And I think one of the biggest compliments that I get after individuals read the stories is, wow, this should be a movie. This should be, I need to see this on the big screen. And what's ironic about that for me is that when I wrote the series, I wrote it from the standpoint of, if I was at Imagine Novi and I was sitting back, how would I want this story told to me? And so with all of that, I love movies, I love video games, comics, I grew up with all of that. And so I have a very vivid imagination. And so I wrote that book like I would want to see Lord of the Rings in the theater for the first time. And so when I get a reader that resonates with that, and that lets me know I did my job.
And as a reader and as someone that just really enjoys imagery in text, that's something that would attract me to a story like this. But you mentioned that this is primarily aimed, your stories are primarily aimed at Christian audiences, but you're tackling issues that are pretty universal across different faiths and even those that maybe don't practice a specific faith or religious experience. It's good versus evil. So, and that's really the big underlying theme of this. How do you then incorporate these themes into these stories in a way that will still also resonate with people that maybe don't have a background in Christian ministry or may not be Christians themselves?
Mm-hmm. You definitely don't have to be a Christian to enjoy the story. Most of us in Western civilization understand the stories, whether we connect with them on a personal level or not. As a matter of faith, we're familiar with the story of the fall of Lucifer, devil, Satan, call him who you will. We're familiar with that. And so I think they're just simply overarching themes that are in the story. Rebellion, what it's like not to be satisfied, what it's like to gather those around you who have the same type of thinking that you have. It is a classic good versus evil story. I'm a classicist in that sense. I like to see good win out over evil. And so in my books, good definitely wins. But you're seeing the descent of darkness and how someone in an idyllic environment can move from a position of privilege, from a position of prosperity, from a position of having everything that they want or desire, but still not being satisfied. And really what the implications of that are for us as we live out our daily lives, both with each other, and if we are persons of faith, how we interact with God.
Donovan Neal is with us on the Splash Live, one of many local authors you will see at the West Bloomfield Local Author Fair happening Sunday, March 23rd from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library. Donovan, we're going to see so many people who have taken the plunge into writing their stories, getting that book out in our community as we attend the Local Author Fair. For you, and as you're talking to us today, and as you're going to be interfacing with people that maybe have a story in them that they want to tell, what advice do you have for perhaps first-time authors that may emerge from our community beyond this weekend's event?
That's a great question. The biggest thing that I can tell individuals who are writing and want to write a novel, memoir, I mean, I see all different types of writing styles and persons, is simply finish. So you don't get any points for starting. You have to finish. Until you finish it, and you can sit back and say, the end, you don't have a product to market. So finishing is the main thing. You can edit it after you finish it, but it's important that you tell yourself the story, write the story down, and that you tell it to yourself so that by the time at the end of the day, you can look back and say, yes, this is the complete story. Now that you have this lump of clay, as it were, now you can do the hard work of shaping it even more into something that's presentable for public consumption.
Donovan Neal is with us on the Splash Live. You can find more information on him and his stories on donovanmneal.com, or better yet, join him at the West Bloomfield Township Public Library's main branch Sunday, March 23rd from 1 to 4 p.m. for the Local Author Fair. Donovan, anything else before we let you go today?
Well, I just hope to see various ones out there. Hopefully it'll be a great day. And I'm sure we'll have a great time talking about all the various stories that we have out there. So, and again, thank you for hosting me today.
Appreciate having you on, Donovan. Thank you so much. Donovan M. Neal, he is an author you will see at the Local Author Fair. Again, Sunday, March 23rd, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. More information can be found on Facebook at West Bloom LIB or on WBLIB.org to learn about all the authors you'll see at this Local Author Fair and other ways you can celebrate our love of reading here in Greater West Bloomfield throughout Reading Month in the month of March. That's going to do it for today's edition of the Splash Live. Before we let you go, I want to remind you can always follow along with us on our social media, whether you're just tuning in and you want to watch the full show back, or you're waiting for those individual segments as you go throughout your day to keep you updated on everything happening in Keagle Harbor, Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, and Sylvan Lake. Scan that QR code on your screen as we speak, or head on over to civiccentertv.com, where you can follow us on Facebook at Civic Center TV 15, and also social on X and Instagram at Civic Center TV, which is also our handle for our YouTube page. While you're on our YouTube page, subscribe, hit that bell icon. You'll be notified every time we go live with new programming and with special event coverage. And every time that we post a video, that's going to be really big on Friday when we are covering West Bloomfield High School girls basketball's 4th consecutive trip to the Breslin Student Events Center for championship weekend in Division I basketball. That can also be found on civiccentertv.com/Lakers25. Big thank you to our entire team out in the field, Kevin McIntosh and Jake Schaff, and Calvin Brown back at Master Control. For our entire team, I'm Tyler Kieft, live, local, social. It's the Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM.